Hi everyone, welcome to the lecture number 3 of Sociology free lecture series. In this lecture number 3, basically we'll be discussing, as shown in the diagram here, the scope of sociology and the comparison with other social sciences. Right, under the scope of sociology, basically the scope here itself means the limits and the content of the subject of sociology. For this, I would recommend you to watch the lecture 1 for a short introduction wherein we discussed in detail about what is sociology. Right, we did this about what is sociology, wherein I discussed around 6 to 7 points as to what sociology is actually dealing with. Wherein the first point is it deals with humans, then it deals about groups of humans, not a single human being. Then it is a scientific discipline, and then it focuses on generalization. There were other small points that which you can basically look at them in the first lecture, right? So the link to the first lecture will be provided in the description of this video. And then coming to what exactly the continuation of this topic is, where we will go to the scope of sociology. And herein there are two sociological schools. One is positivist school of thought and the other one is non-positivist school of thought. And there is also other schools of thought like phenomenology, right? Weber's school of thought is also there. Then you have Mead's symbolic interactionism. So all of this I'll be not taking in the current video. The reason being, for every separate topic that is given here, right? For positivism, for non-positivism, phenomenology, symbolic interactionism, Weber's social action theory, that is the name of his theory that we call it as. For all of this, there is a separate topic mentioned in the UPSC syllabus of sociology, and that will be taken up in the next classes. So there is no point in covering them under the scope of sociology again. But if in exam, if there is a question on the scope of sociology, you can include all of this, and that is the purpose of me writing them all down here, so that you remember that all of these are also connected to the scope of sociology. In the lecture 1 that we have taken, which talks about what is sociology, is also connected here, right? So for now, the special scope of sociology that we are going to cover here is the synthetic and the specialist schools of sociology. Under the synthetic school of sociology, you have thinkers like Sorokin and Hobhouse. And here you have thinkers like S.T. This is a shortcut, remember, right? So who are these? Simmel, Tonys and von Weiss. So these are the scholars belonging to the separate schools of thought. First one is synthetic and the second one is specialist. So synthetic scholars basically say that sociology is a subject which can be synthesized with other subjects, right? It can be synthesized and read with other subjects. With other subjects you can read sociology, is what these synthetic scholars argue. Whereas specialist scholars basically say that sociology cannot be synthesized with any other subject. It is an independent discipline. It is an independent discipline which has to be dealt on its own contours, right? So this is what specialist school of thought says, and this is what synthetic school of thought says, right? So here the scope by these things is that when you are reading sociology under synthetic school of thought, you read it along with other subjects, right? For example, in the next parts we'll be seeing the comparison between sociology and many other general sciences, right? Therein you will understand how sociology can be synthesized with this school of thought. And the other one says that it's a specialist school of thought, meaning that sociology cannot be combined. It has to be read as a different specialist subject on its own, right? So these are the two schools of thought. So that is something that we have done under the scope of sociology. Along with these both schools of thought, you also write about positivism, non-positivism, phenomenology and all these other things, right? So this will be the scope of sociology, right? So the second part of this lecture deals with comparison of sociology with other social sciences. So this is the second topic that we are going to read, and in this second topic, the first sub topic that we are going to choose or that we have taken is a comparison of sociology with history, right? Because history is a favorite for many of us, we have taken this discipline of history, so comparison with that. However, let me tell you a basic framework on how we are going to work out this. So the basic framework under all of this is that first we will see the differences between the two disciplines in any comparison, okay? Discipline differences we will see, then we'll see the similarities, and then we'll see the developments, right? So developments might include something like an overlap between the subjects, where a subject is influencing the other subject, or if a subject has been replacing the other subject in any cases, right? So this is a framework that we use to compare the two subjects, the sociology with other social sciences, right? So first let us take history. So when we take history versus sociology, right? History versus sociology, because we are dealing with the differences in the first aspect, right? Because I've told you the first we'll deal with differences. So what is the difference? History is a study of the past, whereas sociology basically studies the present. It is true that when you're tracing the history of sociology, like we have done in the lecture 2, right, wherein we have traced it back to 1830s when the sociology was coined as a subject by whom? By Auguste Comte. This is all explained in lecture 2. If you want to see the lecture 2, the link is posted in the description, right? So in lecture 2 we have seen how Auguste Comte was the first person who coined the term sociology. So you can say by this that sociology originated very, very recently, and that it deals with the present times and mostly the post-modern times. So when did the emergence of modernity happen? Post-modern times. When did the emergence of modernity happen in Europe? After the French Revolution and Industrial Revolution, right? So after this, whatever changes are happening, that is what sociology looks into, whereas history is all about the past, right? There is no history of the present. If at all you are starting about the history of the present, that is not history, right? Because history of the present is nothing but it's the present, and present is dealt by sociology, right? So this is the key difference between both of them. And then we have a very famous scholar by the name A.R. Radcliffe Brown, who gives a key difference between history and sociology, wherein he says that history is ideographic, whereas sociology is nomothetic. What does he mean by this? Ideographic means it talks about a specific incident, right? For example, when we're preparing for any exam, we read this title called modern history, right? We read modern history. However, this incident can be learnt in history in a specific way, right? Like whatever happened, it starts with 1857 revolt and goes on till the independence time. We know the specific timeline. Things happen in a specific way with a specific timeline. Whereas in nomothetic means that it is a study of generalizations. In the first lecture, wherein I taught you about what is sociology, I've given a very good example here about generalization, wherein I said, if let us say there's a person called Alex and he takes drugs, okay, takes drugs. Now will sociology study Alex as a person? No, it will not. But it will study drugs and druggists. It will study tens and hundreds of Alexes, right? If there is a group of people like Alexes taking drugs, it will then study why are these people taking drugs, what are the reasons that they are taking drugs, and the other consequences, etc. It will study it. So this is a study of generalization. This is a study of specific incidents, right? So that is a key difference that is pointed by A.R. Radcliffe Brown, right? So that is the second thing, the second difference between. Now coming to the commonalities, that is where history and sociology go together, right? For example, let us take the very famous example of Karl Marx. Karl Marx divides the society on the basis of modes of production. Okay, what is this modes of production and what are the different types of societies he categorizes under this modes of production is something we'll do when we'll do Karl Marx. Okay, so this is a star again. That means we'll be doing in the next classes. So here under the modes of production, he says that society passes from one stage to the another stage. Okay, there is a continuous process of society moving from one stage to the other. Right now we are in the phase of capitalism. According to Marx, right now we are in the phase of capitalism, and the next phase would be that of communism, right? So you see what is happening here. There is a stage process that is followed. That is, there is after one stage coming the second stage. So 1, 2, 3, in that way it is going on, right? It is going on in that way. So in the same way, if you look at history also, we have divided our history into ancient, medieval and modern. So don't you see a comparison between both of them? Even Karl Marx has divided society in the basis of stages, and history is also divided in the basis of stages. In fact, it is said that sociology has taken the historical narrative here when we are comparing it with many stages, right? So sociology has borrowed from historical method over here. So that is a commonality between both of them, right? And today, right now, we have a branch of history called the social history. And in sociology, we have a branch called historical sociology. Historical sociology. So by this you can understand like how the two are influencing each other as well, right? So this is what is about history and sociology. The second subject that we have taken is history and sociology and anthropology. Sociology and anthropology. Okay, so sociology and anthropology are famously called they're called what? They're called sister disciplines. And why are they called sister disciplines? Because both of them have a lot of commonality between each other. But there are certain many differences as well. So firstly, when we are starting with the differences, we see that anthropology deals with the pre-modern societies. Whereas sociology deals with the postmodern societies. And what is this postmodern and pre-modern? Whatever society came in after the Industrial Revolution and the French Revolution. Okay, the society that came in after the Industrial Revolution and the French Revolution is called the modern society. Remember this, right? It's called the modern society, and this is the modern society is what sociology basically studies about. Now, what does anthropology study? Anthropology studies the societies before that. They basically are mostly interested in tribal societies, etc. And one another difference between anthropology and sociology is that there's a commonality here, in as much as that anthropology and sociology both were invented by Europeans. However, there is a difference in the way they are used. Europeans used anthropology to study other societies, right? To study other societies, right? For example, here you can take the example of Emile Durkheim. He basically studies Australian tribes, okay? Australian tribes. Okay? He basically studies Australian tribes. And why, you might be wondering why I took Emile Durkheim's name, because he's a sociologist, but here we are talking about anthropology. I've taken Emile Durkheim's name because Emile Durkheim has not conducted a study of his own. He has used the anthropological records, anthropological studies already there on these tribes, right? So this study is also called totemism, which we'll again do when we are doing Emile Durkheim. So a star over here, because we will be doing it again, right? When we will be doing Emile Durkheim, who is one of the main important thinkers, right? Whereas sociology was used by Europeans to basically study the European society itself, right? The European society itself. So understood the difference here? It is here Europeans are using sociology to study the society itself, that is to study England, to study France, all the European societies after the modernity. Here, anthropology is used by Europeans to study the other societies, which they considered were primitive and pre-modern, right? So this is another key difference between anthropology and sociology, right? However, many times the overlap can be seen here. Overlap can be seen here because most of the anthropological studies are used by sociologists to come at conclusions, and the main example here you can take of Emile Durkheim's study on totemism, right? So he has borrowed from anthropological studies of other anthropologists, right? So that is where these two converge. Now, next, coming to the other discipline here, the comparison between sociology and psychology. So if you have listened to the first lecture itself, you know definitely that one prominent difference between both of them is that sociology deals with humans. S added. Psychology deals with human. Single human. There is no S. There is no S. Here there is the presence of S. So that is the main difference between both of them, right? So here sociology studies groups of people, whereas psychology studies the mind of a single human being. Mind of a single human being. So that is a key difference that we've already done in the first lecture, right? And secondly, if you see the convergences, right? If you see the convergences between them, nowadays there are many things which you in sociology that use psychology. For example, if you see Mead's symbolic interactionism. So G.H. Mead is a very famous sociological thinker about whom we'll be doing in detail when we study thinkers, and he brought in this symbolic interactionism, wherein this is a mixture of sociology and psychology. So see how the convergences happen, right? So even Weber, for that matter, even he in his social action theory, even Weber basically tries to combine both sociology and psychology, right? So this is how both of them converge. And then there is a new discipline called social psychology. That is a psychology of groups that is been coming into the forefront, developed by Goethe and Mills, right? So these people argue that there is a intermix between individual character and social structure, and that is where this social psychology comes in, right? So these are the convergences, the three convergences between the two subjects, right? So this is sociology and psychology. Now we have sociology and political science. So political science again is a very favorite subject to many of us, and it's very easy to guess the differences. Political science talks about political institution and polity, political institutions and polity of a nation, right? The main aim here would be government, the policies of the government, the welfare schemes of the government, and how they are affecting the individual. Okay, individual is not at the center here, right? Individual is there as one of the causes, right? Government is the one that is at the center, right? Government is the one that is at the center here. Whereas in sociology also talks about political structure. Yes, right? It talks about political structure, right? But here it focuses on the individual. It focuses on the individual as the center point here, right? Center point of study here. So individual is the center point of study in sociology, whereas the main context of study in political science is the government. So when you are basically seeing things from a government point of view, you bring in political science. When you are seeing the society through an individual point of view, or the society as a point of view, collection of individuals as a society as a point of view, then you call it as sociology, right? So that is the difference between sociology and political science. However, right now, if you have to see the convergences between both of them, the convergence is very interesting. So why is it interesting? Because earlier we had government dominated state, right? Especially in many countries where there are communist parties, the government dominates the state. But right now we are going to democracy, or many of the countries in the world are democratic countries, and India being one of the largest democracies, right? So here in the under democracy we have another thing called the welfare state. So the welfare state symbolizes that right now what is happening is that there is a shift from government dominated state to individual or the society dominated state, right? That is the point of welfare state, right? What is a welfare state? That looks after the welfare of the people. The welfare of the people will be the main core aim of this welfare state. So that is a convergence here, right? So right now even political science is shifting towards studying what is this welfare state. So that is a convergence here, right? So the last discipline that we are going to take, and a very interesting discipline, is sociology and economy, right? Sociology and economy. So again, it is interesting because a great economist, you can say for that matter, Karl Marx, has contributed a lot to sociology even, and that is why we study Karl Marx as a separate thinker in sociology, right? So for this exact thing, they both are very much linked. But if we see the differences, you see that economy basically is a study of the production and distribution of goods, right? Production and distribution of goods. Sociology does study economy, but it doesn't study it as a production and distribution of goods, no. But it studies economy as to how economy affects the society again, right? So if you were able to guess this, you are on the right track of understanding what is sociology, because sociology is all about society. It takes society as a center and it studies the different things associated with it, right? And economy is one such thing, right? So that is how sociology studies. For economy, production and distribution of goods and services, right? That becomes the main focus of study, the production and distribution. It doesn't study about the individual as a center, right? It studies about the production and distribution of goods, right? Next, if you see in economics, economy is basically considered a science because it does a lot of empirical studies, a lot of facts, etc., etc. However, in sociology there are two schools of thought which we'll be doing again later. One considers it as a science, the other consider it as a not a science, right? So that is another difference that you have to be understanding about, right? So here you follow a very clinical and mathematical approach, whereas in sociology there are two schools of thought, and which to follow and which not to follow is up to your this thing, right? So that is another difference thing. And next, the next difference is that economy basically says that man is very rational. What does it mean by saying man is very rational? He takes calculated stuff, okay? For example, here you can bring in the example of a market, okay? If I am going to a market and I have to buy some fruits and vegetables, what will I do? There are tens of sellers in the market, right? Tens of sellers in the market. I will definitely go to that one person who is giving me at a cheaper rate, right? For example, this person is selling the mangoes at 10 rupees per kg. This is selling at 20 rupees. This is selling for 30 rupees per kg, and he is selling for 40 rupees per kg. Whom would I buy? I would buy at a person who is selling it as 10 rupees per kg, because I am a rational person. I am a rational man. Rational man will make calculations and do something which only benefits him. Meaning that he is very selfish. That is what basically economy is. You take decisions based on your self-interest, right? However, sociology on the other hand, in sociology we see that man is rational. However, society's role is important. Okay, and that is why in sociology we study family, how family influences us. We study how marriage influences us. We don't study a single individual. We study them as collective. How marriage influences a person, how society, the family influences a person. So all of this is what sociology basically talks about. Economy basically tells man is very rational and is very selfish, and whatever he does for himself. Whereas sociology says that he doesn't do for himself, he does it for the collective society. So that is a third difference that we have looked at. Now let us see the convergences, and the convergences is, one of them is Karl Marx, that we have already seen. Karl Marx, wherein he is one of the important scholars for both economy and sociology. He binds the both of the subject together. And the second is, right now if we see, we have a lot of concepts developing, like gender budget, right? Gender budget, meaning the budget of the country should portray how much it is genderly devised, right? For females, how much budget is there, for males, how much budget is there, for the other genders, how much budget is there. So that is your gender budgeting. Then you also have poverty calculations right now, which include multi-dimensional poverty index of both Niti Aayog, and even at the international level we have multi-dimensional poverty index. All of this doesn't just consider your money. It doesn't just consider money. It also considers other things, okay? It also considers other factors like the family of the individual, how the family is functioning, how the employment status is, right? It takes into all of these considerations. Money is not the only thing that is taken into consideration here, right? So in that way there are convergences too, right? And convergences, meaning here you can take it as a similarity as well, right? So these are the different subjects that we have looked at. So next, in the next lecture, we'll be dealing with sociology and common sense. I could have covered it here, but because it's a separate topic in UPSC, we'll do it in the next video, and stay tuned for that video. And if you like the video, let us know how you felt about the video in the comments below, and please share the video so that the views reach to a larger share of your population and many people can get benefited out of these free initiatives, right? Stay tuned and take care. Bye.